but it is also 9:31 now, so we better make a start.
Yeah.
So welcome to Neuroccino, our online journal club every Monday morning, where everyone is welcome to bring a exciting piece of science they stumbled over last week and briefly introduce it to us, and then we talk about the paper. So today, both of you will be presenting, Leah and Victor, I think. Any preferences?
Not special.
I think we started with Victor last time, so I'm going to give the floor to Leah.
Okay, so I'm going to share. Can you see the screen? I think yes, it's highlighted. Okay, so last week was published this article by Daniel Lankens about p-values. And so since it's like a subject really debated in the literature right now, but always also like here there are a lot of historical references. So this debate is going on since a long time, and because the question is, do we need p-values? Do we have to move beyond p-values? What we want to know about statistics, so which mathematical statistical instruments are useful for answer to our questions in science. And here, in particular, in this article, there is a focus on psychology, statistics in the neuropsychologist field. And in his article, it suggested that maybe we it's not mandatory to move on p-values, because maybe in some, if correctly used, they can be informative and useful in also in the current science. But of course, we have to be constant. We have to know which are the limits of these methods and which could be the alternatives in some situations. And for example, some information can be provided by also minimum effect tests or equivalence tests that can reach the p-values information. And so it's not just moving beyond the p-values, but is using this tool in an informative way, and if necessary, to continue enrich this information. And sometimes is highlighted in this article. So in this article, there is both an historical view and some like a review of how also students deal with these statistical tools, not only students, but also in the literature, how they are used. So the first thing is to have clear the definition of p-value. That is not something that we can give for granted, because sometimes it's not so clear. So at the beginning of this article, they made this statement that p-values are based on the null hypothesis testing, significant testing. So you are looking to the probability that your observing data, sample data, is in agreement. So assuming the null hypothesis is true. And so you, with p-values, you are testing this null hypothesis. So is what you are doing. And then you can interpret this way, both like in a Fisherian framework. So imagine these p-values as a continuum measure of compatibility between your observed data and the null hypothesis, or more in a Niemann-Pearson framework, that you act if both the null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis is true, and you are trying to find which is more in agreement with your data. And sometimes what we want to know about data, like in our analysis, in statistical analysis, is maybe beyond the possibility of the p-values. So here there are some examples, and also like really informative citations. that, for example, from Cohen, what we wanted to know is, given this data, what is the probability that the null hypothesis is true? That could be correct with the null hypothesis testing. But if you are asked about the false positive, the probability of our hypothesis in general, the effect size of the difference between the two hypotheses, A and B, or how likely the observed data are in agreement with our hypothesis, and or how strong is this evidence, what erroneous interpretation can we done. So all these questions seems to be like beyond the p-values, are more related to the posterior probability of the hypothesis, or the false positive risk, the effect size, the confidential interval, or likelihood, also Bayesian factor, so the ratio of the likelihood, and so these are other tools that can answer to these questions. And what we want to highlight in this article is that the null hypothesis test, the p-values, are not giving the probability of your hypothesis. This is done by the posterior probability. And the fact that there is not a significant p-values, it doesn't mean that there could not be an effect size in any of your hypothesis testing. So we have to be careful in the interpretation of these aspects in statistics. And sometimes here in this paragraph, maybe the null hypothesis testing can be informative. For example, when you have these dichotomous questions, and here, and here they say that maybe they are informative if you want to compare the difference, if you want to compare the mean of two different data sets to see if they can be in agreement or they significantly different. This could be informative. We have to take we have to be careful when we are looking to correlations, because there could be like some lateral variables, causal structures that we are not considering in this analysis. But if we wanted to compare, such as the difference between two means, so the null hypothesis testing that the mean in one condition is larger than the mean in another condition, this can be informative. This can be like useful to use p-values. You can fix your alpha statistical power, and you can also look to specific effect size. And actually, or to look if distinguish signal from noise. So there are some conditions that p-value can be informative, and maybe exchange. So try to mandatory, like using another method as likelihood relation or Bayesian factor can maybe give you like the same result, and in a long range. Some is be shown that p-values are informative in these conditions. And here there is also an historical overview to some attempts to change the p-values. This is the p-value rep was for replacement, something like that, or p-values based on magnitude-based inference, or second generation p-values, but all these attempts show to be less informative than the original p-value that seems actually to work well if used in the right conditions. And in some cases, there are also some articles that show an agreement of Bayesian factor and p-values. And Then, but yes, something that can be useful is, and here is highlighted several times in the article, is to look also to effect size, to not misinterpret the results given by the p-values. And this seems not something to be given by granted, because also like there are some studies in students populations, master, bachelor, that they ask about what's the meaning of the p-values, and the answer usually is wrong. But it's not just for the p-values, but also to other statistical tools like the Bayesian factor. And after like a training, actually the scores in this test can increase. So actually maybe it seems just is a matter of how we try hard enough to understand and use in a correct way these tools. And indeed, like sometimes in some software, statistical software that we currently use, we just have the result of the p-value and not maybe like a verbal interpretation of the test that can help also in an educational field to in an educational way to understand the meaning of the results. And sometimes it's not reported. Ooh, no, I don't know, the effect size. And no, sorry, they wanted to. Okay, the effect size, and for example, using t-test, and it's something that researchers have to calculate it by themselves, so it's not so straightforward sometimes. So maybe that could be one of the reasons of this gap in this use, but it's not just for p-values. Again, here there is a review that is using Bayesian analysis, and in the 31% of the articles evaluated in 2017, it's not specified which prior distribution is used as an hypothesis, and so as can influence the results in a Bayesian framework. Then here, like, yes, it's highlighted that it could be useful to look to the significance of the null hypothesis testing in relation again with the effect size. So, for example, using an fixed increment hypothesis, and so ask the question how much of a difference is an important difference. So also focalized on the magnitude of the effect. For example, here there is an example that women, there was this study in 2015 when we are looking on the color of the face of women when they are in a fertile period, if they are more red. In this study, they highlighted a significant difference in the color of the skin. So actually there is a difference. But actually this difference was not high enough to be seen by men, so from a naked eye. So actually it was not so important. So this is an example to let understand that maybe it's important to complement some significant results with a minimum effect test. And what else? Also, it was because it was highlighted here that when you have a large data set, sometimes you can have significant results that maybe are not so informative about the question you are asking, and can be also trivial. So these are all the you can use the Cohen's D. These are all the tools that you can use to enrich your analysis. And so yes, it's not something like in this article we don't. It's not aiming to provide a new tool or new statistical methods, but just to make some to clear out this field that sometimes can be confusing. So when should I use one test or one statistical framework or another. And so actually, maybe we just not need. So the message of this article is that I get it was that maybe we don't just need to move on p-values, but maybe we need to understand better what we want to know from our questions and so the statistical methods that we are using to deal with these questions. And so sometimes we can use p-value. It's not something that maybe we don't have to use, but in the with the correct hypothesis and be conscious of the limitation of these methods, and in some cases also the alternatives approaches. I don't know if you have some questions or if you want to discuss this in general, because yes, there are a lot of articles dealing with p-values. It seems like a big question now.
Thank you, Leah. I am a bit surprised, I have to admit, that like we've been talking about the p-value and the way we use the p-value not being entirely correct and accurate for quite a long time now, and it seems we're not really moving on from it. Even though everyone knows it's not a fantastic measurement and it has to be interpreted with caution. But somehow even just getting a consistent reporting of effect sizes across manuscripts seems to be a difficult thing to do. So I think having a software that makes it easier it is a good idea. But for example, I was quite shocked when I saw one of the versions of SPSS where the results didn't actually give you the numbers anymore, just a verbal interpretation. And you had to double click on it to get the actual numbers behind it. So yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think it's a combination of we need the tools for it, but we also need probably more statistical education overall.
Yes, here in this article is pointing out that maybe we are not tried enough to because actually are not so complex. We are dealing with more complex questions, like it's not maybe it's just yes to report the effect size, know when you can use the p-values. It's something that maybe we can do. It's not so impossible. I mean.
It's definitely doable. It's a matter of doing it, I guess.
But yes, it seems that there is a lack in also is highlighted here. There is a lack of information and education in these statistical tools. And actually, yes, also in my formation, a lot of things I have to read by myself, like. There was not a straightforward. So this is like this, like a reference, a template that you are sure you have to a little bit like try to find the right collocation of all the tests that are available.
Yeah, there's also huge difference I noticed in the teaching, especially when it comes to undergraduate psychology, for example. Some countries very much stress the importance of statistics, others do less so. So there's definitely room for improvement in our statistical teaching. And like sharing an office with you, Leah, I can see that statistics can be a lot of fun when you read your books and you tell me all those examples and then say you're going to go to the casino next and you now crack the code.
Yes. I want to apply all these statistical Bayesian approach.
Can be fun. Chris, you have a question?
Yeah. The paper. So p-value has been criticized a lot, as you said. But also, so the paper is written by one guy, and a lot of people said that like we should stop using the p-values because it's not informative enough, even though he is trying to give a way to still use it. it kind of reminds me of the debate that was on between like for the lesion symptom mapping, um, uh, like a few years ago. Parashkev Nachev, he wrote this paper showing that there is a bias in every time we use this method, there is a bias, so we have to find a solution. And some people were stubborn and wanted to keep the old solution by just adding some tweaks or some or just saying, oh, we have to use it but correctly, so it looks very similar. This, I mean, I'm not saying that it's the same, but it look so we also have to be careful of people who don't want to change and then try to convince us that we shouldn't change, we should just use it correctly. So in that case, there might be actual better solutions to the p-value, because there is also a very, very, very large part of the literature showing a lot of errors with the p-values, a lot of I mean, and the problem is that then the media is also taking these papers, and they are most of the time they are misusing the information in the papers. But still, some of the papers will say that a big proportion of the scientific literature is wrong because we used p-values. And I mean, yeah, it's so easy to misuse it. Right? It might be a good idea to get rid of it and not. I don't know.
No, actually, I make to myself the same questions. So I say, okay, it's not like a consensus paper, as we have seen that a lot of people are against. So we have to get rid of these p-values. But actually, I looked to the publication of these authors, and actually he used indeed I want to read other articles because he's proposing the Bayesian framework instead. So it seems like to be really it knows all the possibilities, and maybe in that really specific condition we can use p-values. So it's something that could be wrong, but it's not mandatory wrong if you use it in a good way. Also, there are a lot of studies, as is shown in the article, that they see that there is an agreement with also, for example, the Bayesian framework. Or, as you said, we argued a lot of these p-values, and we tried to give alternatives so we tried, but it seems that none of the alternatives is still working, and so we go back to use p-values. So in the article it said that there is the problem, and it's more in an educational perspective, yes, but is that which could be the alternatives? Like for me, I was thinking about the Bayesian factors, so the Bayesian, but this author seems to be really he knows, so he published a lot also in Bayesian, so is content about all the possibility. So about you, which could be so if we have to grid off p-values, what can be an alternative?
Well, so yeah, the Bayesian statistics seems to be a good alternative for a lot of problems. Maybe some problems are will require to use the p-values because we don't have anything else that would work. Like maybe with a small sample, I don't even know, because small samples p-values it doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe some problems. Yeah. Also, I don't remember where I read that. But someone was saying that the statistics using the p-values, like the t-test and stuff, they were created a while ago because we didn't have computers. So the idea was to simplify the problems at maximum, so we could make statistics by hand. So fundamentally, the tests we use with the p-values are just not designed to take into account the variables. That's the purpose. The purpose of these algorithms was to cut all the variables we have troubles to take account of, to be able to calculate the values.
That
So
could be as an answer.
fundamentally, there is something that might not work with these algorithms. So that's it's it's a tricky question, and especially when you're starting. Like, if you learned p-values at school, what else do you have when you start doing research? So yeah, education would also be a big solution to that.
Yeah, so yes, actually, as you proposed, like, so doing simulations and assess the an error, or there could be like a solution, some tools that also use simulations. It's true.
Yeah.
Sorry, Victor.
Yeah, I was saying that education is a big part, but I think the easiest way to get to another new and better maybe solution for this kind of thing is, as Stephanie said, to have a tool that is easy to use and readily available, and something that for everyone, when that is almost like plug and play. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, because it's always possible to find obscure articles that are telling, okay, this is the best statistic ever for this kind of problem, and maybe it is, but you have to go and dig it up from somewhere. And if you are starting in the field, or even if you are in the field for some time and just are not knowledgeable about statistics that much, it's something that is a real problem. So I think it's good to have solutions. It's good to be looking for new ones and better ones in terms of statistics, but these solutions, they have to be implemented in a tool that is easy to use if we want to see a real change in the fields.
Wow. Like Bayesian statistics, I guess I didn't dig too much into that, but it's pretty difficult to find a good tool, right? For
I don't know. I didn't check. So.
There are some, but as he explained in the review of the article, sometimes you don't know which conditions are using these tools. For example, the prior. I am reading now, like there is a book, Think Bayesian, that is an edition that is all written in Python. But yes, it's not a tool. You have to like work with functions, libraries, and construct so there is like a little of effort to have the results. If you want to be like if you want to know all the process, so the priority, how the procedure is created, how it's updated, if you want to understand all the workflow in that field, is not so straightforward. There are some tools.
I think it's also interesting to have this kind of way, because we should have tools that are easy to use, but to have tools that require understanding of what you're doing is also a good thing. It's hard to balance, because using a black box to just put your numbers and have a statistic at the end, it's good for it because everyone can use it, but if no one understands what's happening, it's another problem.
Yes, that's a big problem of the easy to use tools, because then everybody can just put everything, like try to squeeze everything they have in the tool and push the button. Oh, it works, and then it's saying like any kind of bullshit.
True.
But one could have a good help guide, like building up a good help guide, or producing.
But people don't read help guides. That's the problem.
Chris knows that. But it's a very, very interesting discussion. But as you say, like we need to learn how to use the tools properly and not just push the button, because if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. And you need to know from a hypothesis point of view what can work and what can't work. So over on YouTube, we just got the reminder that JASP is a good user-friendly tool for Bayesian statistics. And we had an entire Neuroccino session on that. So just as a reminder, you can go back on the YouTube channel and find the entire session on that. I think Michelle presented that paper.
Yes. Yes, and also I follow like JASP in like Twitter or their website. They do this like tutorial, like tools. If you want to how to use really from the really simple things like how to upload the data, these things to explain. So they are making an effort in using that, but yeah, of course they are just like yeah.
I guess bottom line, we all have to study a bit more statistics and be more confident in what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and accept that that's a tool to use and use it properly, rather than just blindly trust the magic 0.05.
Yeah.
Time, I would move us on, but
All
feel
right.
free to keep that discussion going afterwards. Victor, you have a paper for us as well.
Yep. Let me share
Take it
my
away.
screen. Here it is. Yep. Yep. Share. All right. So my paper is about brain-machine interface. So it's, I mean, I just find it super cool. So this is only why I'm presenting it. It was published on bioRxiv the last summer. I haven't seen the official publication in a journal yet, so I don't know where it will be published, but the article is really cool. It's about, well, let's just go directly to the image. It's about reading the activity on the head knob area of the premotor cortex, and to decrypt handwritten letters in order to write directly with by thinking about writing, and to translate it to a machine. So basically, they have one patient that is called T5 that has been paralyzed from neck down, and has been implanted an array of electrodes on the motor cortex, and now they are trying to make him write with only using this array of electrodes. So they asked him to write, to imagine, to do as if he was writing, and using some deep neural network, they managed to translate what he was writing into the screen so that he can write like kind of like on a smartphone. So this is the basic idea. So I'll go back and now tell what they did exactly. So first they wanted to investigate if it was possible at all. So you have to know that there are a lot of work done on brain-machine interface, and there have been some work really interesting where the patient could move a point by just the thought on a screen, and so they could type by reaching a virtual keyboard and going from place to place and to type with it and to use it like a mouse basically. But that's still pretty slow. So what they wanted to do here is to see if they could just input the neural signal into the machine and get the characters so that directly from the brain. So they asked the participants to think about writing letters one after the other, and they train. They train. I don't remember what they did, but they recover the signal. They do a PCA on it to recover the three main dimension of the signal. Then they threshold it. They do also how do they call it? It's a time alignment technique. They use a time alignment technique because since it's handwritten characters, even in the head, the writing speed is not constant. So this is a kind of a problem. So they have to, for their computer to exactly know what the participant is doing, it has to be normally in a single time frame. So they use this kind of technique to align it, to align all the trials together, using also the PC to cleaning the PCA dimensions. And then they I didn't quite understand how they did it, but they trained a class a decoder to transform the imaging motion of the hand into the kind of a pointer that trace the letters that have been thought, and then this gives, for example, the results. So this is really what happens when the full thing goes on, like it goes from thought to decoder to thought to PCA to time alignment to decoder, and then the computer is able to trace exactly what the participant was thinking about at the time they were testing it. So this is still quite contrived here. It's like do one letter and you think about it, do one letter, you think about it, and then you get this kind of output. So you can recognize the letter quite well here. And so with this kind of output, they do then clustering, a k-mean, I think, to cluster the different outputs. And you can see on this figure that this is a T-SNE of, by the way, this is a T-SNE projection, so it's a two-dimensional embedding of a bigger data with bigger dimensionality. But you can see here that most of the letters have nice defined clusters, so they were able to identify the output of this technique quite well. It was 94% with 94% accuracy, which is pretty nice. Well, you can still see that some letters, of course, because it's handwritten and quite noisy, they are difficult to discriminate. For example, R, N, and H are obviously very closely related as a spatial pattern. So understandably, the algorithm has a kind of a hard time, but still, like 94% is quite great. But well, this is all and well, but this experiment here was done like prepare picture A, go, then prepare another later, then go, then another later, then go. So it's not really an ecological environment. It's not something that you would do in normal. It was more like a test, a proof of concept, but that does not stop here. Then they used a recursive neural network that is typically used for language processing and to do online decrypting of the brain signal in order for the participants to write directly the letter, and so that you can see, like you can write a sentence and the computer will decode in real time what he's writing. So there are multiple challenges here. One is that the time at each letter, the time that the time that each letter was written in the training data was unknown. The computer does not know exactly when the participant is writing a specific letter. Plus, the dataset for the training of the RNN is quite limited. It's one participant over a few weeks writing a few hundred sentences. It's very, very small dataset for deep learning training. But still, it worked very well, as we will see. And so yeah, to fight this problem, they used a model that was adapted for automatic speech recognition, because they also have this kind of problem historically. And so yeah, they trained this RNN, so recursive neural network, to decode the signal in online and to give a probability of each letter for each time point. And I don't know if you can see it here well. I can zoom in, I guess, somehow here. And so, for example, you have the time series here. You can see that the computer will give a probability of a different letter for each time point, and then you can use it to write the sentence online. But they also, so with doing that, they got 5.4% character error rate, which is very low. But also the decrypt the number of character per minute was the participant was writing was up to 90 character per minute. It's 1.5 character per second, which is very fast and much faster than previous thing that have been done, especially the one that I talked about at first, like the one where you had a point that you can move on the screen and use it to type on a virtual keyboard. This is more than twice as fast. But also, they used what they called a language model, which is basically an autocorrect. So it's a model that uses that knows that have like a few 100,000 words in it, and that can detect the probability of what character comes before and after which one and everything. So it can correct these the problem of typing. And here you can when using it, the error rate fell to 3.4%, which, I mean, using this kind of technique, the sentence is perfectly readable. It's just, and it's quite fast. I mean, as I said, it's up to 90 per character per minute. So now you have it. You have like the possibility to just write with your thought if you have an electrode implanted in your brain. I mean, an array of electrodes. And so yeah, they went about on other technical stuff, but I didn't read that much afterward. Yeah, I thought it was really exciting.
Thank you, Victor. That is quite an exciting paper. Wow, like clinically, this could be very, very relevant once it actually works, with the caveat that you need your electrodes implanted. Any questions? Leah's unmuting.
Yes, I was looking to the hand, so I just unmuted myself. No, yes, like yeah, like a joke. We can in the future we just think our messages and like we like I don't know, I was joking. Yeah, of course I know that you need implants, and I was like surprised that you have all these information that seems working, like using only the end motor region, if I'm not wrong, of the brain. So I was curious how it could be if we were like if we have like more implants, so maybe like in two areas, one more on the language functions. And yes, I was surprised that we are able to have all this information just there. And yes, the imagery task is really powerful. Like it seems to be also for when you want to do like rehabilitation trainings, it seems really working. That what you are thinking is really like linked on the output. So in this case, writing. So I was surprised. It's just a comment. I was really surprised by these two things. So how all this information can be, and so we are like in a good stage of our knowledge of the brain if we are able to select the regions and ask for the correct like usage in this case for writing letters. And yes, I don't know if they say why they use this area, not also others, or maybe for the surgery of these patients. And yeah.
So your question is like, why did they implant it specifically on the motor region and not at other place, or?
Yes, yeah, I think that is for the surgery of this patient, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just because, well, this patient was paralyzed, and so the idea was mostly to give him the ability to use prosthetics that, for example, it's like hand grabbing and pointing and stuff like that. It's very, very interesting for them to have this kind of motor control restored with some kind of prosthetics. And so this is the idea behind why they put electrodes on the motor area. They used this electrode. So I didn't go check this. So this is pure speculation. But, yes. This is why I think they specifically check for this kind of thing. The patient probably had this electrode implanted for, kind of a general purpose motor help, and not for specifically for writing. And they transformed the motor help, the motor stuff for that they know that they can be used for writing, and so they just use it, and it works great. But I assume also that if you put other electrodes at other parts of the brain, you could have a much better discrimination between the letters. If you, for example, put it on the some, maybe even the visual cortex and the language areas that are linked to writing, you could have much better precision in this kind of algorithm. But the fact that they managed to do this so well just with the motor cortex, that amazes me.
Yes, also to me.
Any other questions or comments? No. In that case, I'm gonna finish here. We have one more paper, but I want to give it more time and properly discuss it because it's really cool. And I don't want to rush through it. So we're going to save that one for next week and dedicate a bit more time to it. But thank you for preparing it, Valentina. You're definitely the first one next week to start us off. Right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for coming, especially to those who are on holidays this week. Very exciting papers indeed. Have a wonderful week in science, and we see you next week for the Neanderthal paper and much more. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye.